Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen, to the Danger Ranger podcast. This is episode probably like 45 or 46. I don't know. I kind of have lost track. It's been a minute since we recorded. Last we spoke was on live with Joe. We went on some schizo ramblings up at Joe's freaking house in Dahlonega. If you missed that one, go check it out. We also did a Ranger private survival, guide as well when I was out in Georgia. So real quick, I'll recap the Georgia trip. So I was up in Dahlonega for the first couple days. Went to 5th RTB to the overhang. Got to hang out there. There was a recycle class going on, so it was kind of interesting to see the starving boys in Ranger School. And we interacted with the 5th RTB chain of command over at the overhang. They stopped in after their duty day and hung out with them. Talked to a few of them. There was I think their XO came from 1st Battalion. It was a guy in a different company though, so I wasn't super familiar with him, but I recognized at least his name and his face a little bit. So that was cool. Got to see the boys. You know, people don't like to go back to Ranger School for obvious reasons, but I was like in the area, and it's like I'm not gonna probably get a chance to do this again for a while. So I was like, I want to go drink a beer at the overhang. For those that don't know, the overhang is the bar that's on base. It's like a little restaurant area. You can go to it as a civilian as well. Cool little spots where they'll go and they'll feed the boys after they finish their FTXs. So we stopped in there, got to hang out, and then went down to Savannah. There was a dude, the chaplain's assistant up there, recognized me, which is kind of fun. It was the first time I kind of been recognized out in public, which is, it makes sense. It would be there. So he said that he's going to, try out for Ranger School, which I encouraged him to do. And if you're watching this, it was dope meeting a dude. Went down to Savannah, did St. Patrick's Day, got to see the boys in the parade. Some pretty cool content came out of that 1st Battalion released over on their Instagram page, and then was downtown the rest of the day. Met a few of you guys. If you're watching this and I ran into you outside one of the bars or inside one of the bars, hell yeah, brother. Freaking thanks for supporting. Thanks for introducing yourselves. It was cool to meet some of you guys out there. So today's video, we're going to be talking about what it was like to ETS from the Army, specifically the 75th Ranger Regiment. It's going to get personal. It might be, I'm going to kind of open myself up a little bit more about it because it was a very interesting process. And, a lot of the stuff I talk about is how to get into it, how to get into Ranger Regiment, how to succeed, how to do well, how to pass Ranger School, all that good stuff. But eventually, as all things do, that time is going to come to an end. And dealing with that is going to be unique to each individual. It's going to be, the reasons why people get out of the Army are as unique as the reasons that people do join the Army in the first place. So I decided to leave after my 2021 deployment, and my kind of choices were either stick around, I had a couple choices: stick around and do Ranger stuff, or stick around and do Ranger stuff and then try out for an SMU. And at the time we were dealing with COVID stuff, we were dealing with the vaccine mandates, and as well as the drawdown in Afghanistan. So those were kind of the three big factors into why I decided to leave. And I was like, well, Afghanistan's going away. We're not going to be deploying every single year, which is why I joined the Ranger Regiment. Not the end of the world. However, I know that peacetime regiment and peacetime Army in general is kind of a rough place to be in if you joined for the reasons of going to war, which was one of my reasons, right? So that was one of the big factors. Second factor was, do I want to try out and go for an SMU? I was about almost 7 years in at this point, about halfway through, maybe a 20-year contract or so. And this is something that I probably have regrets about, and I do have regrets about, not probably have regrets about, was not sticking around and at least giving it a shot, right? So here's a quick bit of advice for you guys: trying not to live with any regrets. If you want to go do something, go and do it. So this applies for dudes who are on the fence about joining. It's like, dude, if you think that you would really like it and you really want to do it, and it's been something on your goal list or whatever, go and do it. Because when you're older, you're going to be like, damn, I wish I had done that. So I've talked about this on some podcasts or like some lives as well, of, having regrets about not at least putting my name in the hat. People people that join for the intent reason of going to an SMU kind of, maybe it's a little bit unrealistic because they don't even know what the regular Army is like, right? I was one of those kids who did want to try out for an SMU. I read Inside Delta Force. It was like one of my favorite books growing up when I was in high school. And I read that several times, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And kind of let myself down by not at least, putting my packet in, putting my foot, not foot in the door, but putting my name in the hat. But I was looking at, it is still part of the Army. SMUs are still part of the Army or the DOD. And at that point, I was kind of concerned with the direction the DOD was going with vaccine mandates and such. And just the overall leadership was kind of like, I don't know about this. And at that point, too, I was kind of like, I want to do my own thing. I had Rockwell Designs up and running, and it's very hard to run a business like that as well as be active duty at the same time, especially in the Ranger Regiment. You have a high op tempo, even when you're not, I guess, on a war footing, right? So you're always training, you're always going out and doing stuff. It's kind of hard to run a business like the one I was running concurrently with that. So I was like, I want to see what I can do with this Rockwell thing. I want to try something new. I'm at that kind of critical crossroads of, all right, if I try out for this SMU or if I stick in the Army, we're doing the full 20. We're going to shift focus to this and move towards that kind of goal. So I got out in the February of 2022. It was like the week Russia invaded Ukraine. And while I was turning in my SIF gear, your general issue gear, everyone in line was like, "Oh, why are you turning your gear in? You're just going to have to you're going to get called right back in and, sign it back out." I was just like, well, whatever. Like, if that happens, whatever. At this point, I had like 7+ years in like active time. So when you sign a contract, it's technically for 8 years, right? So you can serve 3 years or whatever on active. And then the last 5 years, you can do National Guard, you can do Reserve, or you can just be the IRR, which is the Immediate Reserve. Basically, you're on a recall status where if something were to go down before they would do the draft, they're going to call all the people on the IRR roster first, get those people back in, and then you're going to be, back in the Army at that point. So I had like 7 months of IRR time left, and I wasn't super worried about it. I'm like, if we are going to war with Ukraine, like, hopefully I can make a few phone calls and hopefully just go right back to my platoon, and I wouldn't care what I would do at that point. I'll be a freaking, an ammo bearer. Just put me back in the Ranger Regiment, which, obviously probably wouldn't work like that, but didn't happen, of course. And so I was out freaking February of 22. Decided to stick around in Savannah for a little bit longer and really try to process what the fuck just happened in the past 7 years of my life, right? For a lot of dudes, they join right out of high school and the Army is all they know, which is why they're able to kind of retain those guys a little bit easier. They don't have a taste of the outside world compared to dudes who, went to college first or joined a little bit later in life. And there's that fear of like, oh no, how am I going to make money? What am I going to do when I get out? Like, I don't know who I am. Because you spend, those critical formative years in the early 20s in the military, and that's literally all you know. Like, your brain is wired to do Army tasks, to think, like a soldier, to do all that stuff, and then all of a sudden you're thrust out on your own and kind of, all right, what are you going to do now, kind of thing. So it's like a second, maybe comparing it to graduating high school, maybe at a higher degree because you're an adult at that point. I don't really consider 18 an adult. And you're kind of just thrust out into the world. It's like, all right, what are you going to do? You got so many options in front of you. You have the school option. You can do the National Guard. You can do the reserves. There's a lot of stuff available for you to do. We'll talk about the Army's transition program. I don't remember what it's called. It's the basic one they make you go through at the Soldier Center. And they basically like, oh, here's how you write a resume. Here's how you do a budget. Basic, they're trying to teach you basic life skills as you're going out the door, and it's not super effective. You kind of get out of it as much as you put in. And I kind of did the bare minimum on that. It was stuff that I kind of already felt I was, good at. However, I did do a program, and this is where I'm going to talk about kind of other programs that are available for dudes that are getting out. I did a program called the Honor Foundation, which is geared specifically for special operations people who are making that transition from special operations to civilian, which was a great program. I've talked about it a few times in the past, and it's, I think, like a 13-week program. Maybe it's a little shorter. Completely, it's free. It's a nonprofit, and they provide mentorship. They assign you a mentor, and they kind of give you kind of tasks. They kind of, get to know you a little bit, and then they help you develop a plan for you when you get out. And when I went through that, it was around the fall of 21. And to be honest, I still really, Rockwell Designs was going right, but I still was like, I need something a little bit more than this to kind of figure out the rest of my life. And my mentor was great, she was great, but the internal work of what I really wanted to do, or what I, my why maybe, wasn't really there. The rest of the Honor Foundation program was really good. They taught you how to write resumes. They would grade you on resumes. You did fake job interviews, or like practice job interviews, which was really good, for people that were trying to, I guess, apply themselves right into a job straight out of the military. One comment I will make about the Honor Foundation: it is more geared towards people who spent longer than, the 4 years, 5, 6 years in special operations. A lot of my peer group in the Honor Foundation was, dudes who were retiring, or women who were retiring out of it. So they had 20 years experience. They were, a senior rated NCO, or a, higher ranking officer. And those people are more suited to step maybe right into a, C-suite kind of level job, which is what a lot of it was geared towards. There wasn't a whole lot of, and there was support, but there wasn't as much support for the dudes who were looking to, or who were younger and, were still kind of in the early stages of their career, in the progression, if that makes sense. So there's, a lot of dudes that were, my age, or my kind of peer group, that were, looking to go to college, looking to do internships at other companies if they had gotten their bachelor's degree while they were in, so on and so forth. So that was one of the programs. And then I also linked in with Three Rangers, which is a Ranger-specific kind of network, specifically for dudes who are trying to get, who are leaving the Ranger Regiment and looking for opportunities elsewhere. It's kind of, hey, what are you trying to do? Okay, we can link you in with these people, and you can, talk to them, pick their brains, figure out what you kind of want to do. So I linked in with them. Didn't do a whole lot of work with them, just again because I didn't really, I was lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I just kind of took the road of, I'm going to figure this out kind of by myself, at least for the first bit. And that was rough. It did put a lot of strain. I was dating a girl at the time. We were living together. It did put a lot of strain. And one thing I want to talk about is you kind of do go through a little bit of a personality change when you do leave the military. For me, I was a little bit, because I was under the stress of trying to figure my life out, I was, a lot more short with her, a little bit more short with people. I was kind of antisocial. I kind of kept to myself a lot. There was a little bit of anger pent up, just kind of out of nowhere, that I kind of ran into. And that did put a lot of strain on the relationship. Around this time, in the summer of 22, was kind of when I found like Andrew Tate, Hustlers University. I kind of started doing some stuff with that. Found some success with copywriting and learning kind of from the dudes inside that, the professors, I guess. Summer of 22 was fun. Went to Amsterdam for fun. Did a couple smaller trips, and that's when I kind of really was doubling down on Rockwell at that point. Was like, all right, hey, I need to make ends meet. This is what I got to do. So was sewing a ton. Had a very good morning routine going, freaking all this stuff. This is kind of back when I started the channel, for those of you guys who've been around for a while. I had the long hair, and I did that freaking 30-day video challenge in September, where I really kind of kickstarted this channel. It really kind of took off, which I'm going to look to probably maybe replicate to a degree here, maybe a couple videos a week, but I digress. So ended up kind of ending the relationship at the end of 22. Decided to move back to Utah. I was like, hey, I need to like clear my responsibilities to a degree. I felt like I wasn't being a very good boyfriend. I mean, I'm not going to launch into the post-mortem of this relationship because that's not why we're here. All I'm saying is that if you are a dude who's getting out, I was just talking to one of my buddies, and he had gotten out at the same time as me. Ended up getting a divorce recently, and it's like the change from soldier to civilian, specifically Ranger Regiment or Special Operations, is not something to be taken lightly. It is something that you should develop a kind of game plan or war plan around. Try and have something lined up for you to do when you get out, so you're not just kind of like, well, shit, what do I do now? One thing I've kind of observed, just interacting with other special operations vets or rangers, is that you kind of have the majority of the two paths that you've got. You've got, a lot of dudes will go right into business, entrepreneurship, working in that realm. And then the other half are going to go and they're going to try and keep doing the same shit that they were doing while they were in. But now they're a civilian, so they're doing contracting. They're doing, they're working for GRS or, State Department, or doing some kind of overseas work, just because that is something that you do have the resume for at that point. You can look on a few contracting websites. A lot of the websites have a minimum of 6 years special operations time. Some of them have 4. It just really depends on the kind of position you're applying for and kind of your roles and responsibilities for that position, right? So a lot of dudes will go that route, and I see a lot of dudes get success that route, and the same thing with the business route. That's kind of the route that I took. So the other thing I kind of want to talk about is when you leave an organization that is, constantly on a war footing, or, always training for something, and when you leave, all of a sudden your life goes from, 100 miles an hour to literally, standstill. Everyone says that it's not speed that kills you, it's the sudden stop that's going to get you. And that's, kind of what I experienced. And there were some dark times. Kind of just didn't really like myself for a long time. And that's something I'm still kind of working on. And I think if we look back and we watch maybe one of my older videos of me talking about why I joined the Ranger Regiment, since a young age, I was, wanting to be in an armed profession, wanting to do adventurous stuff, right? And in the process of me getting out, I thought that I was done with that. I was like, oh, I did what I wanted to do for the most part, short of, trying out for Delta. And I thought that I was, that part of me that I'll still have it, but it's like, I did that. I can be, satisfied with what I did. And I've kind of come to the realization and just accept that that's kind of my nature. And it's really hard to kind of go against your nature at that point. Or at this point in, someone's life, later on. And there's this guy on Twitter that I follow, and I've listened to a lot of his spaces. His name's Brute de Force, and he's always talking about constantly leaning into your nature. And that I would listen to his stuff, and I'm like, man, what is my nature? And I would kind of deny the fact that I wanted to keep doing this kind of stuff, right? And then just a few months ago, I'm like, this is kind of who I am. Like, I want to keep my skills up, keep my proficiency up. I need to figure out a way to make money doing this, right? So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is kind of leaning into that part of me. There's some dudes that I've met recently. I'm not going to talk about them because they like to say gray on the internet, but there are some other dudes, some other veterans that I've linked in with recently, and we're starting to work on some pretty cool projects. They're all, adventure sport athlete type dudes. One of them does like the wing flying. They both ski, snowboard. A couple of them, everyone skis or snowboards because we're all out here in Utah. And we've gotten to do some pretty cool adventures thus far after meeting them. I've been friends with one of them on Instagram for a long time. And just finally we linked in at this point, and I found out that, we all live pretty within the same kind of region, which is really cool. So that's one thing that I will say is you can't do this alone. It's gonna be really difficult for you to try and navigate the transition process alone, which is what, the Honor Foundation 3 Rangers program was kind of designed for. And for me, it was hard to vibe with that. It's hard to do over the internet, over the phone communications with people, and really get that benefit of that tight-knit community that you had in special operations, because it's like, hey, you're literally living and breathing and doing everything with these fucking dudes for X amount of years, and then all of a sudden it's just whoosh, gone. You don't have it anymore. And that mental shift is freaking difficult, like I was saying earlier. One thing in the Honor Foundation that they talked about was there's like 3 major life stressors, right? There's, and I'm probably going to forget one of these. One of them, as I know, is changing a job. The other is moving, and the other is, I can't remember it off the top of my head. I want to say it was like losing a friend, or like, loss just in general. And they're like, it's hard for one person to go through all this. And then with military transition, you're kind of going through almost all 3 at the same time, because chances are you're going to move. You are changing your job, your career path, and then you lose all your friends and your buddies. And I, was going through all 3 of those at the time. So I would say that trying to find, and legitimately trying to find, not just, oh, we have this group, oh, come join, because it's like, it's going to be a group of other veterans, and you may or may not, be able to relate to them on the same level. But really, really do try and seek out and find, I hate the fucking word tribe, because it's beat to death and it's been corporatized. But find your group of dudes that that are on the same level, same kind of vibes or wavelength as you are, and that's really going to help. Like the past couple months of hanging out with these dudes has been really great, and I can't thank them enough. You guys are watching this, you know who you are. Maybe they'll make an appearance. I'm hoping to do some trips with them this summer, so maybe they'll be willing to show their face and kind of talk about themselves. But I'm not going to make them. It's you go from performing at such a high level and having so many responsibilities and stress that, like I was saying, like once those are removed from you, you're like, what is my purpose? Like, what do I do with myself? And it's not an easy thing to do. I would say it's probably harder than any of the freaking selections I went to, just RASP and Ranger School. I guess if you count Ranger School as a selection, it's more of a school, obviously, but I would rather freaking do Ranger School again than go through the process of leaving the military, to be frank with everyone here. Yeah, no, because Ranger School is kind of easy. You just wake up and do what you got to do for the day, eat the little scraps of food you get, and get 30 minutes of sleep a night. Like, it's a very clear set objective, but now you're kind of thrown into a choose your own adventure world instead of here's the narrative, here's all the players, here's the international players, and you're in this kind of narrative of the U.S. and special operations. Like, you're doing stuff potentially that's in major news headlines around the world, and all of a sudden now you're kind of out, and you don't really have that kind of, I'm trying to think of the word here, that urgency, I guess, to like do things, because it's like you're on your own time now. So a lot of my buddies have gone to college and stuff, and it's like, that's great, that's probably good too. There's a couple programs that help Rangers get into Ivy League schools, or specifically, I think it's some of them are open to everyone, but I know that Ranger Regiment has a partnership with Columbia University. One of my buddies ended up going and graduating from there. And I had looked at that, going that route, because it's like, hey, like, if I want to go to college, I'm not going to go to some fucking community college. I want to go to, a hard fucking college, or a prestigious college like an Ivy League. I was looking at maybe going to Brown or Dartmouth. But then I decided, I was like, that's kind of still running from the issue, right? It's like, oh, I'm just going to go to college, and that'll give me time to figure things out there. And it's like, well, yeah, but you might figure things out, but it's not going to be a guaranteed kind of thing. You're still going to have to, navigate the internal world of yourself, and again, kind of figure out your nature. Like, what are you kind of wired to do? And it's something that you can't really, there's no process, there's no, oh, you do this for, you do this amount of journaling, you do this morning routine every day, and you're going to figure out what your nature is. It's like, it's something that kind of is, you just kind of live, and then you kind of reflect, and you kind of can see patterns in your life. You can kind of see where things in your life have pointed you on a certain path, and you can kind of ascertain that. At least that's kind of what I, did. I did a little bit of reflecting. I was like, this military, this freaking adrenaline filled, adventure type life, like being a road man, like out on the road doing cool things, being able to pick up and move at a moment's notice, go on adventures. That's kind of what I like. And I like business as well. So I'm trying to figure out a way to merge the two of them without stepping on my, anyone's toes in the process. So yeah, I had a whole list of things I wanted to cover here, and I'm trying to remember. It's like, not that this is any more relatable for a lot of you guys, but imagine like you're on an NFL team, right? And you've been training for years and years and years. You've been playing, let's say you did 6 years, 7 years. Maybe your team went to the Super Bowl a couple times, or once, and then you're out, and you're used to performing at such a high level, and now it's like, hey, I don't got no coach anymore. I don't got no teammates, and it can really lend people to kind of going down self-destructive cycles. You do see a lot and hear a lot of stories of veterans, not just, special operations veterans, but for some reason, I think it's heightened a bit in our kind of circles because they're very tight-knit. They're very much mission-focused, mission-oriented, goal-focused, goal-oriented, that when you take someone out of that environment, they can flounder for a little bit. Which I'm not afraid to admit that I was for a while. So kind of feeling like I'm getting back on the path though. That's kind of the long and short story of it. Maybe this isn't as exciting as some of my other videos, but I wanted to kind of talk about it here. Because I'm sure that I have dudes, I do have a few, I know there are subscribers out there that are, veterans as well. And I'm sure they could probably share similar experiences and kind of similar feelings of when you leave the regiment or leave special operations. Those same feelings, I'm sure that they've felt them. So if you're one of those dudes and you've made it, 26 minutes into the video, 27 minutes into the video here, would love to hear your kind of stories in the comments down below. But, maybe I'll make a more detailed guide, because this is kind of just me talking to the camera for 30 minutes here. There's not really any solid, actionable advice that I can give you or have given you, really. So maybe I'll make a video later on of, once I have my own life figured out a little bit more, of things that I did that I kind of found worked for me when it came to leaving the military. Another thing I guess we can talk about is dudes like myself. I'm not going to deny that I'm one of these dudes. They'll hold on to that identity for a long time, which is one of the reasons really why that I kind of have fallen off making videos, is because I don't want to just lean on the fact that I was a Ranger. Like, I was this once. It doesn't fucking count. It's like, what are you doing now? It's like, that's great, congrats and all, but that was years ago. Like, what are you doing now? You can't just rely on, the fact that you were in the Army or the fact that you were special once. It's like the same dudes that say, oh, back in high school. It's like, no one fucking cares, dude. And so it was a little bit of my own self-doubt and voice in my head where it's like, dude, you got to stop talking about Ranger Regiment so much. And I've kind of pigeonholed myself into kind of being stuck with that because of the brand of Danger Ranger or whatever. So that is also kind of why the video is kind of slowed down a significant amount after about 2022, was I realized it was like, hey, like, no one, people do care, but people don't care at the end of the day. Like, I can talk, ad nauseum about Ranger Regiment, but it's like, how is that going to forward me in my own life? What else on the side, or what other things aside from that are you doing? And that's kind of why I stopped making videos as often and as frequently, is because I'm trying to figure out more cool shit. So I'm not just a fucking washed up, almost 30-year-old talking about the fucking glory days on the internet. Which is, it's fun and it's good for the dudes who are trying to join, but ultimately at the end of the day, like, there's only so much of that content that will be relevant, that I can't, recycle and reuse. So the goal is to, keep bringing people on the podcast and keep making new and exciting content. Hopefully some travel stuff, hopefully some adventure stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching thus far. And if you made it all the way, I appreciate you for listening to me and taking the time to kind of hear the other side of the story of Ranger Regiment, because it's not all freaking guns and glory, right? Like, it's going to come to an end one day, and have a plan the best you can, and realize that it's not going to be easy. And if you're a spouse for whatever reason, or a family member of a Ranger who's, watching this video, or, there's a couple dads that have watched my channel, like, my son's in RAS right now. I'm like, that shit fires me up. So, when your son or whoever your family member does end up leaving the military, realize that it's not freaking easy for them. And be as supportive as you can of them, because that shit's fucking hard. Appreciate y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.